Well, hi again. Hello, everybody. It's Frightmare weekend. That's 23 Well, we are so excited to have you guys here in our brand new space. It's pretty cool, right? The convention center. A little bit more room to move around. And of course, we have so many great people here. We got John Carpenter here. And of course, we all love Halloween, but a movie that's very, very special to all of us in this room is Christine. Now, the really cool thing about this is, of course, we get great guests here, and we have three guys from the movie that we are so excited to bring up. And I'll bring them out one by one, because you guys know that we're going to get the characters in there too. But I'll start it out here, then we'll take some questions, and we're going to have a good time with this. You guys ready? Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and bring out our buddy, Irving, Ostrander. Moochie. Let's keep it Tash. There we are. They all take a round of applause for these guys. They're still alive. All right, here we go. Wow. We're so excited to have you guys here because years later we still love this film and it still holds up so well. And you guys got to be excited because all weekend long you get well done. And the fans are just the best. I mean, the horror fans are the best. But Texas Frightmare weekend fans are even better. So you guys got to love this, right?
Yeah, and first of all, thank you all for coming. I think I can speak for all of us and everybody from the film that's not here even, that we're just so grateful and amazed that this film continues to find a place with you. So we're really, really grateful. And also a big shout out to all the staff here at Frightmare, because these guys have just been great. They're very well organized. We've been taken very well. I just think you've done a great job, don't you? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this movie, there's so many scenes that just stand out. How many of you guys saw this as a kid? And so, I did too. And some of these scenes stand out, and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have seen it as a kid. But, but here we are, and we all turned out all right, right? But one of the things that stands out are those death scenes. And, we're talking about like the Moochie death scene, and the way that was filmed and everything. Like, goodness. Well, let's talk about the on-screen demise here for a second, because they're pretty standout.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and start with it.
Oh, hey, hello, I'm Moochie.
Yeah.
You want to know about the death scene?
Yes.
Death. All right. Well, it was really interesting because it was about 3 days that they took to film that scene, and what was really interesting about it is I remember sitting on a chair right before we started to film, where the car, the bright lights go on, and I said to Carpenter, hey Carpenter, wouldn't it be cool if Moochie walks out into the street, and then all of a sudden he says his lines, and then the lights go on, he goes, Malcolm, I'm the fucking director, I know what I'm doing. I kind of was directing John there, but he's the king of horror. But it was an incredible time to shoot that scene, and it was scary. I mean, I read sometimes on Wikipedia that the car had rubber fenders or it had plastic fenders when it was chasing me down the alleyway. It didn't. It was a real frickin' car. I mean, it's a real 58 Plymouth Fury. So, I'm running, and I said to the stunt coordinator, Terry Leonard, who was incredible, and I said, Terry, what happens if I fall? And he goes, well, I'm only going to be driving as quick as you're going to be running. And remember, Moochie was a little bit overweight back then, and stuff like that. So whatever it was, I still know that if I would have fallen, the car would have gone over me and I would have gotten hurt. No. But and then I'm just trying to go through this death scene really quick. And then when, it gets into the loading dock, the really cool thing about the loading dock is that the wall behind me had a bulldozer behind the wall. And the bulldozer had these cables. And the cable was attached to the bulldozer, went through a little hole that was between my legs to the chassis of Christine. And when John Carpenter said, action, I had to pretend to be scared, which I was absolutely petrified. And all of a sudden this car is being pulled towards me. And the noise and the crunching and the metal sound was absolutely unbelievable. So everything, the only person that did the stunt for me in that death scene was when I was running down the street and jumped over the barrier, and then when the Moochie character around. So that's the Moochie death scene.
Hi guys, I played Rich. My name is Tash. Thanks for being here. What was fantastic about that day of shooting my death scene was it was a long drive out from LA towards Magic Mountain, 40-minute ride, and we pull off the freeway, and there's this gas station. You see it all the time. And we get out, and that's the set. We're using this gas station, that's the set. And we come to discover, as we're chatting and waiting to do our scene, that gas station was never there. That they basically came in and built this gas station, and they did such an amazing, realistic job. Like, you would go into the garage of the gas station in the corners and stuff. There'd be like old oil cans. They even had like spider webs around. So it was done so well that at one point we're all kind of huddled around the director, what's going to happen and this and that. And all of a sudden, this guy in an MG convertible pulls off the freeway to get gas. And we're all going, oh no! And he gets out of his car and he walks to the gas pumps and he doesn't even like look up to see there's like a whole crew of film people here. And as he's going to the pumps, and I think he kind of played with the pump, and it was like obvious that he's not going to get any gas today. And anyway, so that's where that happened. If you guys come by our booths, you'll see it. We've got a photo of Carpenter directing my death scene, and you really get a peek behind the curtain of what's involved. I always love those kinds of things, of like the making of and what went into it. So basically, besides getting killed in that scene, in that day, they blew the gas station up, which happens right at that point, and we had to walk away from that site that they had built, and we keep walking and walking and walking. I think we were about a quarter of a mile, roughly, from that site, and they literally blew that gas station up. It was a cloud of flame and smoke, and from where we stood, you could feel the heat. It was incredible. So that was sort of like parts of my day of getting killed by Christine. I love it.
Well, my death scene, before it even started, I said to John, John, I'm being chased by a car. Why would I run down the road? And John said to me, because it's a movie. Don't have a lot of interesting things to tell them about it other than they're following through the camera car, and the camera car is loaded with the cinematographer and John and others associated with the production. And it's all mounted on a pickup truck with a sort of a aluminum scaffolding out front. So when I ran down that road, it was, 3/8 of a mile or something like that, it seemed like. And then he said, cut. Well, I slowed down pretty quickly as a human can, but a truck full of people and equipment can't slow that fast. And my heels hit the back of that thing, and I almost tumbled and went under the car. So, yeah.
But the Carpenter sense, at that time, and just films in general, there was no social media. You guys just kind of had a family style, thinking of this film. You guys got to hang out and do all that. Hey, is there a certain memory from the set you think will always stand out to you? Like you're just looking around and going, Always gonna remember this day, this was fun.
Well, I don't know if this is a direct answer to that, but one of the things that I would mention that because of the stories that Steve and Malcolm told is, you know, to me, one of the things that's really fun about film was the creation of the film itself. Because, you know, nowadays, you know, we just have some young kid going like this, and now I got all the CGI and I can do everything. Well, we had to figure out how to do those things so that you didn't see them on film, so that they made sense, and to me, that was a lot of the fun. And so when they blew that gas station up, as Steve said, we could feel that 400 yards away. And when Malcolm was being killed, you know, you have to figure out, well, how do we get a car to go into a loading dock smaller than the overall width of this car? And, you know, oh yeah, let's use a bulldozer. Great idea. I mean, so it's really fun, and I think that's part of the fun of doing those movies from back then in general, is that we had to figure out how to do it. You couldn't just imagine it and let the computer do the work.
Yeah, there were a lot of memorable stuff. There was a lot of hijinks going on this set. A lot of goofy things just to create, maybe because it was a kind of an intense shoot and stuff, but it was just a lot of like laughter and practical jokes and stuff, and people lighting each other's butts with big lighters at bad times. But I think one particular memorable thing, again, it's tied to this death scene, was I realized how they were going to be doing it when I saw it set up, and I went to Carpenter saying, could I do my stunt? And I thought, because if he's here today, sorry, John, but he's cantankerous. He's like, with actors, he's very dismissive. You know? And he said yes. I was like, oh no, he said yes. And it's, again, I have the shot, you'll see it at our booth, but it's really incredible. And for me, having gotten to do that stunt, I have never had that kind of energy in my body before. And I see why stunt guys like doing stunts. It's a really weird high that takes over your body. So I think I shot that somewhere around 9 p.m. at night. It was after 3 in the morning and I couldn't sleep. I just had this incredible energy in my body from having done that, which involved, basically, there were a match placed there, and there were two guys pushing this Camaro window, which is supposed to be Christine pushing the Camaro, and I have to fall back as these boards are coming at me, this whole rig, and it kind of starts to go over me. It was like, we rehearsed it a few times, it went well, but it was like, it felt athletic. It was just really an incredible feat, and it was very memorable, yeah.
How many of you know how they kept the car on fire?
Good question.
Anybody know how they kept the car on fire?
How?
Painted it with rubber cement. Metal doesn't burn, right? So they painted the whole car in rubber cement. And the stunt driver that did that, the first time he pulled into the gas station, his car died. And the reason was the fire was sucking up all the oxygen. And so the car died. So they had to put a tube from the inside of the motor, the intake, into the interior of the car, because he knew that the air couldn't get sucked out from that right away. And that's how they managed to get the car to go into the flame and back out without dying. And then it was on fire. And Terry Leonard, for any of you who are real stunt aficionados, was the man who went underneath the Indiana Jones thing underneath the truck. An incredible stunt man, very brave. He couldn't see looking out that window, because the windows, as you know, were already blacked in. So when he took an aim to go across that gas station, that's all it was. I mean, the pumps, that's all it was an aim. He couldn't really see out of there. And he was in a full suit and everything else, of course. But that's how they kept the car on fire. That's the fun stuff, I think, right? The little details.
I got a memorable, as what Steve was saying, there were a lot of practical jokes, so I'll make this one quick. So Carpenter loves practical jokes. So the producer of the film, his name was Richard Kobritz, and he would come to the set every day in his beautiful Porsche. And he would get out of his Porsche, he would put a car cover over the Porsche. Really just baby his car like you can't believe. So Carpenter one day got the whole crew and cast except Kobritz and said, we're going to do something here. So what they did was they got the car cover, took it off of the Porsche, and then put it over a really beat up Volkswagen. And they moved the Porsche away, where it was, and put the Volkswagen there with the car cover on it. And then during lunch, we were all sitting there, we knew what was going to happen, and Carpenter said, "Oh my God, Cobrits, what's going on over there?" And there's a bulldozer, and it just destroyed his Volkswagen. And Cobrits almost had a heart attack, but obviously it was a fake.
Unbelievable. The little things like that really kind of made it a really fun place to work.
Speaking of cars, how many cars did they use in the movie? I'll see how knowledgeable you are about it.
5, 6.
What's your guess?
23.
There was at least 21 cars used for that. Now, what are these new, if you were to buy a new Plymouth today, not a new Plymouth today, but if you wanted to go buy a Christine car today and restore it, probably set you back maybe 40,000 on up.
Yeah.
They bought 21 of these from as far east as Tennessee, as far north as Montana. And they fixed 19 of them up, 19 of them were running during the film, and 2 of them were cannibalized just for parts. And they, in the Darnell shop where we all go in and beat up Christine, they had a full-time body shop going on in there, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during making that film, because they ran out of cars at the end of the film. And the car that Steve and Malcolm and I were destroying had to be repaired in order to get, because they needed another car for the film. And when we did that scene, we beat that car up. They basically just loaded some new stock in the film cans. Back then, we're using the old film. And they let it run until they ran out, and then they put in another stock and just let us go. So we all hit that car for about 10 minutes, and some of the outtakes you'll see that are not in the movie is I ripped the hood off the car and chuck it, and we did a bunch of stuff on the inside. But at the end of the night, this car was a mess after we finished with it, right? They beat it up further after we left that night. With the prop guys damaged even more, and then they had to fix it up again.
We had quite a few of those beautiful Camaros. It was a mint Camaro that we were in, 67?
68.
68. And for me as a young kid, I used to collect the Hot Wheels cars, and I was so excited when the Hot Wheels came out with the Christine Camaro and the Christine car as well. They did 2 Hot Wheels, so that was pretty cool, pretty sweet.
It was really interesting. Bill was just saying during the scene where we wrecked the car, Carpenter said, "Guys, I'm going to let the film run for a long time, so don't break character, don't do whatever you're supposed to. If you get injured, just keep going." So there was one point, and now you can see it, where I take the sledgehammer and I smash it against the window of the driver's side, and I was the only idiot that forgot to put gloves on at the beginning of the scene. So when I smashed the window, glass went in between my hand and the handle of the concussion hammer, and I had to keep going, and it was horrible because when we were done, and Steve will know, the glass flew everywhere. It was pretty intense because I had blood pouring down my hands. Had to get a doctor to take the glass out of my hands, and we had it in our face. We were. It was pretty fun.
All supervised by OSHA, by the way.
One thing I love about Frightmare is that the fans are so passionate, and they know so much, and they have such good questions. So let's open it up here. Who's got a really good first one? Let's go right in front.
Who cracked on the dash?
Who cracked on the dash?
Me. Well, thank you. You figured. No. It was cut out of this. It was shot. I mean, if you look at the Blu-ray and it's shot, but I'm glad they took it out. It's pretty.
Didn't I pee in the gas tank?
Yeah, well, he peed in the gas tank, but he did it very sexually. I remember. Very fun. For him, that was.
Just quite many questions. All right, there you go. All right.
How old were y'all when y'all did the movie?
Oh, how old are you?
I was 20.
I was 23.
Okay.
Same age as Travolta was in Grease. We got a lot of flack for that, you know, that you'll constantly see things, oh, that guy looks so old or whatever. Honestly, this is the guy that was held back in school. There's a reason that I mean, no joke, right? I mean, you know, he was. And the guy that I modeled it after was a friend that I knew in high school, and he also was held back and had sideburns.
One thing that was pretty cool about being young and doing that movie is you do have high school memories fairly fresh in your head. And I've had instances where, you know, one of my friends just maybe looked different than the norm or something. And, you know, you got all of a sudden on a high school night, there's a car chasing us around. And he actually pulled over, got out, they got in a fist fight. It was a real heavy thing. And so when that Christine shows up behind us in that Camaro, like that was pretty fresh in my mind. And it was, you know, I think I said a line like, she's following us, or it's backing up, or it's just like really, if you guys have ever been involved with somebody's kind of like on you like that and doesn't let up, it's freaking scary, you know, you don't know what's next.
Is that why he says hold me at the end of this?
Yes. That's exactly right.
We love it. We had a question, I think.
I was wondering what your favorite Stephen King story is, and if it's Christine, what your second favorite would be.
Well, just right off, I went out and got the book right away, and I actually brought the book to a couple of times. There were some rumors flying around that Stephen King was going to show up, you know, and as far as I saw, it didn't happen. But we were up in Bangor, Maine, doing some event around there, and again, Mr. King was supposed to show up. And this sounded pretty legit, like there's a local radio station in Bangor that was kind of implying or making some suggestions that that could happen, probably just to sell some tickets. And I didn't bring my book, but what was pretty cool, and I didn't get a chance to bring the pictures to this show, so there's a couple of car collectors that have a mint Christine car, and what we did is we drove the car to King's house, and he has a really trippy house. It's a Gothic house, and it's just amazing. I mean, if we drove down the street and said, guess which one is Stephen King's house, you'd go, duh! So it's super Gothic. It looks like it could have been just past the turn of the century, and it's just got like, you know, scary black wrought iron in the front, and it's set back from the street enough. We put the Christine car centered in this photo beautifully right in front of Stephen King's house. And to me, what it conjures is the imagination of the writer could be so real that what he imagined, I can picture Stephen King looking out his window, and there is Christine right in front of his house. Honey, you gotta come out here.
I think my favorite Stephen King story is what Stephen Tash just said. I think, my favorite Stephen King, my favorite Stephen King movie is The Shining, book is The Shining, because I got to cheat and watch the movie.
I actually haven't read any Stephen King books. Only his screenplays, but the one that I liked was the one with James Caan and Misery. Yeah, I think that was one of the best.
That was a great one. All right, let's go here.
Were you really running from the burning car?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was, as I think Steve said, it was, you guys know Los Angeles at all?
Yeah.
Some of you? Well, it was out by Magic Mountain. At that time, it was a kind of an undeveloped rural area, and they constructed all this stuff, so it was a very rural road back then, and yeah, I just ran down the road.
This young man right here in the front row.
One of the questions for the typical story. I showed my nephew this movie when he was 10 years old, and the part where you're destroying Christine, his face was devastating.
Yeah.
He just sat there.
We've heard that, I've heard
So
that.
sad.
Yeah.
Every time one of y'all died, he just got so happy.
Now, I've gotten that before, where the parents actually are explaining that to me in front of the kid, and the kid's looking at me, still upset at me.
Well, remember here's the thing, and we all know this. The Christine car, the actual Plymouth Fury, it's a collector's item. And the Mopar people and the people who are car collectors do not like to see their car get destroyed. Even now, they are so angry with us that we have destroyed a car 40 years later, and we just said, well, it's a film. We were young. We were doing this thing. I honestly had one of the best times I ever had smashing a car apart.
Yeah, but also put it into proper context. If I told you, I give you a sledgehammer and said, here's a 1998 Chrysler, beat the crap out of it. How many of you feel guilty about that? Right? So in 1983, we were filming it exactly right now in 1983, and you said, beat up this old Plymouth Fury, who cares? I mean, that was a kind of a junk car for a high school kid in those days. So it really wasn't didn't have the cachet that it has today. And to Malcolm's point, we were in Australia in February, and there was a gentleman with us who happens to be an owner of one of these Christine cars. And the promoter wanted me and Malcolm to beat this car up again. And they put this promotion on where, buy a ticket or we beat up the car. And literally we had the gloves on and we were going to do it. And this guy in the front row that came with us was hiding his face like this in his hands. And somebody bought it, spur of the moment, $45,000.
They didn't want to see us, beat the crap out of the car. They really didn't want to see it. Which I'm too old now to do anyway.
Saved by the bell. There you go.
Going back to smashing the car, did your carpenter choreograph for your first half, or did you just roll and say go to town?
That's a great question. Yeah, it was pretty scary because you're putting instruments of destruction into these young actors' hands, and they were really stuff that could, you could hurt each other, stuff swinging. It was really scary, so there was a little bit of choreography, but a lot of it was like, stand a little bit away from him, and there were some direction and stuff, and a couple of run-throughs of doing different things and trying different things. It was, speaking for myself, it was really, I was very apprehensive about the whole thing because we had heavy-duty things that were going to destroy this car. You had glass, you had metal, you had mirrors and all kinds of stuff. And it wasn't really specifically drawn out to you're going to be in the front, you're going to be in the back. It was just kind of a little bit winged.
Not me. I thought it was the most fun thing I ever did in a movie. And, I would just like to point out in gratitude to the prop guys, because they had to anticipate what we might do. Like, at one point I hit the battery, smashed the battery, and I thought, oh, that wasn't good. That battery acid splashed all over my face, but fortunately these guys thought ahead and changed it out so there was only water in there and stuff like that. So these guys were really, really thoughtful. And of course, John couldn't practice that. You couldn't rehearse it. We just didn't have enough cars. So we had to make a go of that one. And so they set up very general camera placements to capture the whole image. And then after we started doing the damage, then they were safe to come in for close-ups on individual actions that we'd done. But until then, no, it was step back with it. Was there 2 or 3 cameras?
I think there were 3.
3 cameras I think they had set up just to get as many angles as they could. So no, the prop guys are the ones that really did the work on that one.
But Bill's right. You're right, Bill. There's a point where, once they start doing the single shots, I remember, I haven't seen the movie in a while, so I remember opening the door, pulling out a knife, and then doing the interior. But here's one hand here, holding on, and I'm doing something like this with the other hand. I was like, man, I could have put that knife right through my hand, and Carpenter would have loved it. That's crazy. We took chances. That's what made the film so beautiful.
There were calculated risks, though. The glass was probably sugar glass.
It wasn't safety glass.
Well, I can't say, because in 1983 they didn't.
You wouldn't have blood on your face.
but they used to use things like that would shatter a little bit more easily, because in 1958, if your head went through that, it would be sharp as a glass, right?
So what is your favorite Carpenter movie besides Christine?
Starman.
Yeah, I love Starman. I love They Live as well. I found They Live was amazing. But Starman is gorgeous. I love how Carpenter sets up atmosphere. Like even I would go visit the set when I wasn't on call, and I went to go see them film at Arnie's house, and it helped me with my work as an actor, because it was for me about just different levels of economic living, and Arnie's house was just gorgeous. You know, it was just, they did a beautiful job, and it was a really, the way it was set up, the lighting and everything, had a great mood. And then we did, there was stuff John would do where he would do wet downs, where they basically have mechanics to make it look like it rained, and then you get those great shots where you get the reflections off of wet pavement and stuff. And it's just, I love many of Carpenter's films has that atmosphere that just draws you in. It's beautiful.
And by the way, I just had lunch with Keith about 2 weeks ago. Keith Gordon came here. It was the only show he's done. It was in here in Dallas in 2009, which I happened to be at as well. And we always like to have Keith there. Keith is a really nice man. He's a very accomplished director. Maybe some of you have seen some of his work. And I asked him, I said, you know, people love it when you come out. Why not do that more? And he told me personally, he says, you know, I'm a bit of an introvert and I get uncomfortable. So I know that I can speak for him when he said he'd be just so thrilled to see this room so full of people that are still fans of his. And so I'll give you a shout out for him, and that's the only reason that he doesn't die.
Of all the movie bullies, one of the dirtiest moves I've ever seen is when you reach around and grab John Stockwell's junk.
Well, I really love doing that. I mean, look how good looking he was. I'm kidding.
Or did he stand in for that scene?
Steve wanted to stand in for that.
That was all real stuff. It was pretty intense. They had the stunt guys there kind of help walking us through what they kind of expected to see. And Malcolm and I were like, let's get in, let's do this, you know?
It's really interesting because, as Steve said, with Stockwell, what happened is that they tried to put a cup in where his, in his crotch, and it was too big. And for me, it just didn't look real.
Did you hear that, John Stockwell?
It didn't look real. And so they said, well, let's put sweat socks in there, because I needed to, put my hands there and grab his junk. And so when they did the socks, it looked really good because my hands did squeeze, and stuff like that. So
And
sorry,
they
John.
too long.
That was a dirty move. All right, but then,
I'm just going to ask for the whole panel, were there any inspirations on moving characters that's finding your life?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was relating to earlier. Was I had this Jewish friend who had like this Jewish fro, and so in the San Fernando Valley at that time, there was like these guys that were being like really mean to him, like just being nasty and cruel, and being in that car with him and feeling his pain that this car was like, they wanted to beat him up. And I was able to use that stuff, and it was freaking terrifying. Am I about to get in a fight? Who's in that car? You can't see them. And that just beautifully transferred over for me to be able to feel the scariness of the unknown of what's behind you.
Mine was a high school guy that I knew named Bill Porter when I was in high school, and he was older than the rest of us. He had the sideburns that I carried in the movie, and he wore black t-shirts and jeans, and so I very specifically modeled my character after him.
Oh, I got one more. So in high school, there was one guy that was a buddy representative. This guy looked like somebody's dad when he was still in high school. And he had these big, cool sideburns. And I was able to grow sideburns, and I think we were like just a handful of kids that like had sideburns. So this guy was like kind of a protective guy, like he would kind of like, if anybody was bullying anybody, he'd kind of show up. But when I grew the sideburns, it was like our connection, like he had sideburns, I had sideburns. I was in the club. Well, doing this movie, he had some wicked sideburns going on, and so I grew mine out, and it was totally taken from that whole thing of my experience, wanting to kind of be a part of Buddy's club, right, and just growing those sideburns out, and it's fun when you can draw from your life like that. It really is.
I had just, in that year, I had done 2 films, one called The Lords of Discipline and another called Flashdance. And then Christine came around. So in The Lords, I played this really pathetic kid who commits suicide. And then in Flashdance, I get to play a mean bully. And then in Christine, I get to play another bully. And I just kind of was like, yeah, this is really, acting is really fun because you get to do things that you just don't get to do in real life. I mean, I guess there are people that do it in real life, but I just went with the flow, and I really didn't have anybody that I based my character on. So.
All right, so we got time for a few more questions. So you got one?
Well, I was going to ask you, were there any near misses on set or scary incidents, but I think you've already answered that. Unless it's something else. But did you know when you were making this film that 40 years later we would all be sitting here worshiping you and worshiping this incredible piece of...
Yeah, she's asking if did we know, 40 years ago that this was going to be what it is. And even just today, Bill and I were like looking at each other going, what the heck, man? This is incredible, because we've got friends that are actors and nobody remembers some of those movies. And it's just astonishing, just the right combinations of things that it's almost unexplainable that it's got these legs. And one of the benefits of us getting to do this is it's really touching. Like you'll see like the grandfather and the father has his son. So you've got these generations coming up to you all at the same time, and how it's kind of like that bond for them. They shared that movie and they watch that movie, and it's like something maybe they watch every year. And it's just amazing, the longevity, the legs that this thing has had. It's unexplainable, because if it was something that you can bottle, every movie would bottle it. And it's amazing.
But to your question, I think it's important to note that, when you get Stephen King or John Carpenter involved, okay, that had a lot of cachet. But at this time, when they were making Christine, Stephen King's movies were failing at the box office. Yeah, I mean, Firestarter didn't do well. What were the other pictures that he did?
The
Pet
Shining.
Cemetery and stuff like that. But yeah, The Carrie did well, and Shining did well, but a lot of his other stuff wasn't doing very well. And in the early 80s, if you were doing horror films, it means you couldn't make it in real movies. Horror films were like the fallback, or for people that weren't regarded as upper class, And so when I got the call, to speak for myself at least, not only did we not think it had legs for 40 years, but you kind of go, I don't know if I want to risk my career on this. And I wasn't sure I even wanted to do it. But then you go, Carpenter and King, that's pretty top talent. You got to go with that. So no, and you figure there's 1,000 movies a year that are released in the United States. So you figure there's 40,000 movies, and we're in top 50, something like that, of films that people keep go to. So we feel incredibly fortunate. We should ask. I'm sorry, I don't mean to monopolize the mic here, but I want to ask. They want to make a remake of this. How many of you think they should make a remake of that? Show of hands. Only a few of you, huh? Nobody wants a remake of it when you leave it alone.
Drop that too, by the way.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm amazed that we're sitting here, and like you said, Christine has become a cult film, and I have all these different friends that are in Killer Clowns, and you guys are here to see Killer Clowns. You're here to see The Thing. You're here to see, what's the other one? With Carpenter film right now?
Halloween.
They live, I mean, come on. I mean, we are fortunate guys, fortunate people to be in these really cult films that you guys are making cult. So have a hand for yourself.
All right, who's got the really, really good last question to close this out?
Way in the back there on the left.
Master.
Way in the back.
Way in the back, let's do the way in the back. There we are.
You guys have any mementos from the movie?
Mementos from the movie.
I've given all mine away.
I mean, you know, you have scripts and crew shirts and crew sweatshirts and stuff.
What about the stiletto?
No, they took most of the props back because they keep very close track of those. And one, because it's cost the studio money when those things go away. The only thing that I can really tell you is that I have an original script and I have some of the posters. They were pictures of myself at the premiere at the Motion Picture Arts Academy on Wilshire Boulevard. I have some of those, but recently I gave away the little chain bracelet that I had to a promoter in Australia because he was so kind to us. But otherwise, no, we weren't allowed to keep a lot of that stuff.
Well, we are so happy that you guys came out to this very, very special panel for a very special movie that we still all love years later. Now we're going to do a quick let's all huddle together. We're going to turn around and take a selfie with the audience. All right?
We have props. All right, here, let's do one here. There you go. Everybody in, 1, 2, and 3. Christine, 1, 2, and 3. And now, the professional one.
You gotta get a fun shot though.
All right, ready? Everybody, arms up. Here you go. There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Christine.